of who's
Tommy Robinson.
Tommy
He's
Robinson.
had some. So
They tell what happened. They kicked his door in at 4:30 in the morning.
So
tell us what's going on there.
he over the last few weeks he has he's joined up with Ezra Levant's Rebel Media, who are based in Canada.
Right. Been watching that.
I've known Ezra a long time, since the early days of counter jihad work, in fact, and he's a great guy. And I think Rebel's doing excellent work all over the place. And they teamed up with Tommy, and suddenly Tommy became, I think, very, very powerful. Not as the leader of a street protest movement. I am very glad he's not doing that anymore. I don't think that's the way to go. But he has become a proper journalist, and he's doing journalism, committing acts of journalism. And one of the acts of journalism that he's been doing is standing outside courthouses all over the UK where there are trials in progress of predominantly, and I mean, I say predominantly, it's almost 99% Muslim gangs who have been raping exclusively non-Muslim girls. And these are nearly always white. The race is less important than the fact that it's always Muslims as the perpetrators and always non-Muslims as the girls. It's something that's been going on for 20 or more years in the UK, probably elsewhere in Europe. Holland is the only other country that's really looked into it properly. And whenever they've looked into it, as has started to happen now in the UK, the numbers are starting to look absolutely atrocious. So it's just horrific what goes on. They pose that they take these girls, it's called grooming. They appear to be their friends. One of them befriends a girl, 12, 13, 14, that kind of age, and gets them hooked on drugs. And eventually they're just basically used as, it's horrific, sex toys, and passed around from brother to father to uncle. It's an epidemic, and it's not being covered by the national press. So there are multiple ongoing trials today.
Because of political correctness.
Correct. Because
it makes
they call them
Muslim
Asian
immigrants look bad.
They're not even immigrants. It's hard to even call these might be third generation or second generation Pakistani, but they might be families. A lot of it is Pakistani, but not all. There have been Somali gangs in Oxford. The only common feature that you can point out is they go to the mosque and they claim to be Muslims. And anyway, what Tommy has been doing is standing outside the courthouses and filming these people. And it's like old-fashioned, nasty journalism. You know, outside the courthouse, you want to get a picture of the perp war.
Right.
I mean, I think the Americans have a great tradition of this. And nobody in the British press is doing this. And Tommy has been doing this. So he went last week to a courthouse in Canterbury. And I think this was the third or fourth one that he's tried to do. But this time the court officials said they didn't want him there, but they can't stop him from standing outside with a camera. And eventually they snuck the 4 defendants out the back. So he didn't get to film them on that occasion. But something happened while he was there, and we don't know what. Yesterday at 4:30 in the morning UK time, which is 6:30 for me, I'm just sort of half waking up, about to get out of bed at 7. Periscope goes off, and there's a 40-second periscope, and it's Tommy in his house, and he's just talking to the camera, and he says, "I'm being arrested. It's 4:30 in the morning." And he shows the 2 police officers who've come to arrest him. So they bang on his door, wake his wife and kids up, and drag him out of the house. And he spent all day yesterday. First he went to Luton police station, then they took him to the particular court where he had been last week, which leads... I don't want to speculate on I don't know what the charges are any more than he's put out. And he said that he's not allowed to talk about it. But this is astonishing. This is like Turkey. This is like some kind of dictatorship where you're locking up journalists.
What do you think the charges are?
It's probably some form of contempt of court. He might have said something wrong. Maybe he inferred the guilt of a defendant, which is problematic for an ongoing trial. There are very big restrictions on reporting trials in the UK. It's much less free than America, for example. And I don't say that this is a bad thing. When a trial is in progress, what you are allowed to report on is limited in the UK. There is no, it's not like the First Amendment where you can pretty much say anything. So he might well have, he's not, he's not he didn't go to journalism school for 5 years. He might have transgressed, I'm just speculating, he might have transgressed one of those rules. But the normal course of action would be a phone call or come in for a meeting and don't do that again, and a slap, a sort of a metaphorical slap. But because it's Tommy Robinson, it's police at 4:30 in the morning, bang, 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 and off to prison. And he spent all day, he was bailed last night. He has to appear in court in 2 weeks' time. And I don't know exactly, and when they bail you, they can put all sorts of restrictions on you. So I don't yet know what the restrictions they've put on him. This can be, and it's almost coincidental. Last night, Rebel Media released a 1 hour, 40-minute speech that Tommy gave last weekend in York. And that is the story. It's the story that's told in his book as well. But it's the story of the police persecution of Tommy Robinson for the last 10 years. Multiple prison terms, multiple arrests. A continuing theme is that they would arrest him on ridiculous charges. Then they would release him on bail, but the conditions of bail would be unrelated to the arrest. So they'd arrest him for doing £30 of damage in a hotel, and then give him conditions that he wasn't allowed to enter a whole section of Luton for 5 years. It just crazy.
I mean, what's clear is in Europe you have, and you see this like immediately. There's a terror attack somewhere, and there's a bunch of people dead in a train station, or in a grocery store, and the first reaction is, nobody go get Islamophobic on here. Yeah. Nobody, we got to protect the Muslims because this is going to backfire on them.
It's the same thing I saw in Hebron. Right. It's the same thing. What's happening is they're arresting Tommy because he's upsetting the Muslim community, and the Muslim community,
and if you upset them, man, that's shaking the hornet's nest. It's just be better just leave them alone.
I don't know if we can control these guys. They might want to go out and riot. I'm not sure. You better just right. And so they're controlling Tommy.
Just leave it well enough alone. And you have someone like Tommy Robinson that is going out and saying, I am not going to leave this alone, and the consequences is something that we're going to have to deal with. And if we don't deal with it now, we're going to have to deal with it later.
Yeah. And so I've supported the guy for a long, long time. It was not always easy. The guy, he has flaws. He had a lot more flaws. I think now he's in a very, very good path. And he's saying things that need to be said. Western civilization is in deep trouble if it doesn't listen to guys like Tommy. And the British authorities, it was the Secretary of State, it was Theresa May as the Secretary of State who was clamping down on the EDL. And clamping down on Tommy. She was directly responsible.
English Defence League.
The English Defence League. That was the organisation he led. He's no longer part of it. He doesn't have anything to do with it. But she's now the Prime Minister. And this if they're going to start up now another campaign of persecution of Tommy, the difference this time, I think, is that he has this international media. I mean, it was a 1 hour, 40-minute video that I sat riveted, even though I know the story. It's going to be seen. I'm going to link
to it in our description notes below.
Yeah, you start watching it after 5 minutes. I promise you will just keep watching because it's an unbelievable story. It's like a story of being tortured in Turkish prisons. I mean, it's almost as bad as that.
Have you ever been in a Turkish prison?
No, I'm very keen.
Line from airline.
Never to go back to Turkey.
Airplane. Airplane. All right, Brian. So that's a lot to think about this week. It's good. I enjoy getting together with you and talking about what's been happening, what I've been thinking about over the course of the last week, and hearing what you're thinking about. How do folks find you? I mean, one way is you can look into the description notes right below, and you can find our Twitter
Brian
handles.
of London.
I'm Reb Mottle. Brian of London.
Mottle. You
can even just search those two terms, and we're doing a lot of stuff. I've got an audio podcast that's out. We've got all sorts of stuff on. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Subscribe to Brian's YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter. And you know, if you want to hear what we're thinking about in a longer form, listen to this every week. Subscribe to it. Share it with your friends.
Great. Thanks very much.
All right,
Red.
Brian. Take care,
week.
brother. Bye-bye.